What's going on, everybody? Retro Wrench is back for another video, and as you can see, we got the S3 all kind of prepped up in the air for this big undertaking. We got a really good mini series coming for you guys, and this is going to be pretty much taking this car from stage 2 all the way to stage 3. Now that includes the bigger turbo, the fueling, and of course the tune and all the other necessities that go along with it. So in today's video, we're just going to be installing the fueling. In tomorrow's video, which will be just the turbo install, and then the next video will be the tuning, which will be really just kind of first reactions and first impressions and really being able to drive the car and have fun with it. So for today's video, if we make our way over here, like I said, this is going to be all fueling. So this includes the low pressure fuel pump, the brushless from EQT, along with the MPI kit. This is from Precision Raceworks, which is also on EQT's website. Before I get into a little more, everything's going to be linked down below. So if you guys want to do this to your S3 and make some serious power, this is definitely the route to go. And then of course we have our Euro intake manifold. You didn't have to go that route. We chose to do it just for simplicity terms. Otherwise you could reuse the one you have there and just drill out some things. We didn't really want to drill out anything in plastic because if you overboard or whatever the case is, you're going to have issues. So we spent the extra couple bucks and got the whole kit. So along with that will be our sensors, and then of course our NGK spark plugs, which EQT recommends. But yeah, so without further ado, let's kind of just jump into this and get this thing kind of ready to go so we can install all this stuff. Alright guys, so the first step we're going to do, just keep in mind we're going to be doing the turbo literally tomorrow, so everything we're going to do is kind of in steps for that. We're just going to get this engine cover up, get that out of the way. And then that kind of exposes what we're going to be removing. We're going to be removing this intake manifold, the fuel rail, and then the fuel line that connects to the fuel pump. But in order to do that, there's a lot of brackets, plugs, and charge pipes and intake hoses that we got to get out of the way. So first thing we're going to do is just drain the coolant. Like I said, if you're just doing the intake manifold, you do not have to do this. But we are going to be doing the turbo install. So we're going to drain that just to get this line out of the way and just free. So I'm going to go under. Fortunately, Audis and Volkswagens really don't have a spigot or anything to loosen up and drain it. You got to just take it from the lower radiator hose and just disconnect that hose clamp. And we'll go ahead and do that now. We're not going to film it because you really won't be able to see. Just take the lower radiator hose and just disconnect it and watch it drain. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll kind of free up some stuff here and we'll start cracking. Alright, so as you can see here, we just went ahead and took this charge pipe out of the way. We just disconnected from the top to the throttle body, and then this went to the intercooler itself on the side, and then we just disconnected that sensor. And there was two T30s. Really couldn't film it under the car, so we went ahead and just did it off camera, but really easy to do. WD-40 is your best friend, and a flathead or some hose picks, and you'll get this thing right out. So now that we got kind of everything out of the way, it's just really going to be taking off a couple bolts. And then this thing, the bracket here, and we'll be able to get this thing right out. Alright, so as you just saw with the charge pipe, we went ahead and got this bracket off, which mounts to the block, and then this mounts to the manifold itself. Just a 13 and then a triple square. So we'll get this out of the way. And now I disconnected all the wire connectors on this side. Really easy to do. And then the next thing is just going to be taking off all these T30s, and then there's a couple 10mm nuts on the side there, and then disconnected the fuel lines, and then there's a couple electrical connectors under here which we kind of have to get out of the way before we can start disassembling those. So we'll go ahead and take those T30s off and kind of go from there. Alright guys, so here's those 10 T30s that were holding this thing in. Now, just gotta kind of break the seal, which seems like it did on this side. It might be getting caught on this side. If it's given some kind of restriction, just take your time. Don't force anything. But just kind of wiggle it out. There we go. Alright, so we'll get that out of the way. It's just kind of maneuvering it and kind of fooling with it. We ran out of daylight a lot quicker than I anticipated, so sorry guys. But we'll get this out of the way and we'll show you what's under there. As you can see in my hand, we managed to get the intake manifold off, kept the throttle body connected, and we'll just set that aside. There is a little bit of carbon buildup, so we'll probably go ahead and off camera just do a little carbon clean in there. But as you can see, it's not the worst, but there's some carbon buildup, so we'll end up cleaning these up, cleaning up the valves and everything. I have a video of our Mark V being carbon cleaned. I'll link that up above if you guys want to watch an in-depth, video of how to carbon clean. But for this video, we're not gonna show you. We're gonna go ahead and do, the carbon cleaning, and we're actually gonna replace my water pump while we're in here. It's at the mileage of 60,000. It kind of failed. It was pretty much a design flaw on Volkswagen Audi, so we're gonna go ahead and do that off camera. There's tons of tutorials on it, so we didn't want to make a video on that. And we'll probably start transferring over all the parts to the Euro manifold, and then we'll probably pick up tomorrow on with the daylight and kind of finish up that part, and of course the fuel pump, and then the next video will be the turbo. What's going on, everybody? As you can see, we finally got some daylight. It is the next day. We ended up overnight. We worked probably till like 1 in the morning. We did the water pump and some other stuff. But today, back to the video, and we're going to start swapping over all the components from the old intake manifold to the Euro manifold. And I highly suggest investing a couple extra bucks on EQT's website and get the Euro manifold. Everything is pretty much done for you. Otherwise, you would have to start drilling things out, and drilling into plastic isn't always the easiest thing. Some things will crack, so you might have to end up buying a new one. So definitely just go ahead and get this Euro manifold. Everything's pre-done for you. But I'll quickly explain what the difference is, and I'll also link down the Precision Raceworks step-by-step tutorial. But as you can see, first thing here, see these little nut certs here? If you didn't have the Euro manifold, you would be drilling them out in this one and this one, and then you'd have to insert some nut certs like that. And just the fact of drilling plastic, it's not always the best idea. It never really works out well unless you use some heat. And then also, since we are now putting injectors in here, see the Euro manifold already has the slots for the fuel, the injectors to be dumped in there. That's another thing, that on the stock one, they're not present, so you would have to drill them out as well. So really, it just makes sense to get this Euro one. I'm going to keep reiterating it because it's really simplistic, and possibly having to crack this and then wait on a new one and hold up the whole install. So but yeah, we're going to set you guys up on a time lapse. We're going to install our new sensor, and we're going to pretty much get these injectors set up, and then swap all the old parts onto this one, and we'll go from there. And then it's pretty much just reinstalling it, and then the fun part will be wiring it. It's pretty much plug and play, but there are some pins we have to pin into the module over there. A lot of pins, so that should be fun. And I don't know if I mentioned from the get-go, but we did get the 925cc injectors. We opted to get the smaller out of the two. We didn't really need the bigger ones. Of course, maybe down the line we will. Then we got to get a different tune and stuff like that. But this is my daily, so I want to keep it reliable. Enough of me rambling. Let's get to it. Alright, so we got, as you can see on that time lapse, we got everything kind of mocked up where they are. We'll torque this and these a little bit later. We just kind of want to get them on for now. But now we're going to take our wire harness, and these are all going to go to the module there. But we're going to take these injector, they give us new harnesses, so it's going to come in on an angle. But we're going to go ahead and get this one in, like so, and then we're going to get these 4 on, or other 3 on, and we'll start connecting the little harnesses to there, and then to here, and then the rest will just dangle until we put it back on the car. So now that we got everything kind of mocked up where it needs to go, we're going to go ahead and install this back in the car, and then we'll get to this and just kind of tuck this to the side for now, because we're going to have to remove this harness here and start pinning in some connectors. But for the most part, everything's good. This is going to connect into this guy here. Also, we couldn't figure out for the life of us what this connector went for, but now we're realizing that these kits are built in with the connector for the flex fuel. We're not running flex fuel, so we're just going to kind of tuck that to the side, and everything has a home, so let's get to it. Alright, so we got everything buttoned up down here. Now it's just pretty much going to swap over this sensor here and then set this back in the car and tidy that up. And then it just comes down to the wiring port, and then we'll just have to also take this fuel line, because we're not doing an aftermarket fuel line kit. We're going to run the stock one, just connect it to here and connect it through here and to there. So it's just going to run through that, and we'll get rid of a lot of that excess hose there. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and swap this sensor over. Should just be a T20, and we'll just loosen that guy up. There we go. There's the old one, and then here's the new EQT one. So we'll clean up that surface and then just put it back in the same way we got it out. So as you can see, we got everything kind of bolted down and secured. You know, we got them going right through the fuel rail now. But now the fun part, the more tedious part, is getting this into here and into the fuse box itself. So we're going to route this wire harness, and we'll probably end up zip tying it to this one down here, and then we're going to take it right through this factory housing right there. And just kind of keep it up in there. Then these are the pins that are going to have to go into here. These are going to go into the fuse box. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there's a written tutorial, so if you want to follow that, it's in the description itself. Make sure your battery is disconnected too, because now you're fooling with the ECM and control module. So we're going to have to pretty much take this back part apart and then take out the locking ring and all the other components with it. So we'll actually just go ahead and get that locking ring out of the way now. Just kind of slides up. Just be careful, take your time, everything's plastic. There's that locking ring, so that's out of the way. And we'll take a little flathead and kind of just pry this backing off. So you can see it's numbered, number 1's there. Number 21's over here, 105, that's the total number of pins. So we're going to be doing a couple different pins, and we're going to have to remove the blanks in there. So let me see if I can show this for you guys. So in these wires, see right there that little guy that my hose picks on? That guy is a blank right there, so we're gonna have to remove that because we're gonna have to insert a wire through there. We went ahead and got the one next to it because we're gonna have to replace that one. So you'll just take a really fine pair of needle nose and just kind of rip the blank. It's really, really hard to get it. Oh wow, that came out really easy. And that's pretty much a blank right there. So we got that blank out right there. Keep in mind the way that the channel goes in, because essentially, since you're going to be putting one of these guys in there, it all locks that same way, so it's going to be going in just like that. It might not exactly be this wire, I have to double check, but just follow that instructions, which is linked down below, because it will kind of guide you exactly which one to go. And we're just going to go ahead and, you know, put these in. And then we'll move on to these for the fuse and then the ground. And then finally we get to the low pressure fuel pump. But let's just get all these blanks out of the way and go from there.
3 hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
So we just struggled with getting all those pins in. That was quite a nightmare, but we ended up just getting in there maybe like 30 minutes to an hour later. It was just very tedious. So we ended up actually pulling back that OEM you know, taping, and it gave us a little more access to move those wires around, and then we just retaped with our own electrical tape. So now we're actually going to take this red lead and the purple lead and the black lead. The red one's going to go up into this slot here in the back side, and then you just put your 20 amp fuse in there, and that will give that power to that circuit. And the purple one, we actually just went ahead and taped. We're not going to need that right now. That's another lead if you want to put it in one of these if you're running an E sensor, but we're not running an ethanol sensor because we're not doing E85. And of course this is the ground for if you're doing ethanol as well. So we're going to just tape these up and kind of discard them under here. We're going to take this fuse box apart and then put that lead in there with that fuse, and we're going to be done with the MPI kit and start going to the low pressure fuel pump. As you can see here, we got the EQT brushless low pressure fuel pump and all the wiring, the little controller, and of course all the adapters and whatnot. This is a direct replacement to the stock one in there, so it's really going to be very simplistic. And I'm just going to set you guys on a time lapse, and we're just going to, you know, crank through this thing. This is probably the easiest part of this whole job of the turbo install, so we're glad we get this out of the way and then start cranking on the next video, which would be the turbo install. So unfortunately, just reviewing the footage that we just filmed of us putting this back together, the camera overheated, so that's freaking lovely. But essentially, just putting it back in reverse procedure, and we got that gasket back in, and then we got our lock collar back in place. So now we're going to take that fuel line feed right there, plug that in, And we're going to disconnect the old controller because we're going to be bypassing that and we're going to be running a new controller. But let's start just hooking some things up. This one's going to go into there. And this one, you're not going to be running. You're just completely skipping that. So now this guy is going to go, just kidding, there's so many freaking connectors. This guy's going to go into there. And then this guy is just going to connect to that guy. Boom. That will be the ground. This is going to be the controller, and this will go into the trunk. So I'll just connect this for demonstration purposes. Disconnect the lock. And boom. Locked in place. Okay. So now we're going to want to reuse this grommet, so we might have to make some modifications. Kind of stick this through here. Feed this actually on the other side, so let's go ahead and disconnect this. And you know what? We might as well just feed it all through. Boom. Okay. That through. Have to ground that. We'll get that through there as well. So many freaking connectors. It looks like a mess right now. I'll get it to all work out. I'm just gonna try and figure this out as we go along there. Damn it. That was a struggle. No. Okay. And then I have to cut a hole in this grommet probably. Alright, so we ended up cutting that grommet, just a little slip with the scissors, and we're able to feed this through, which is going to go under there. But for this ground wire, you could really, you could do a scuff it up and get metal, no paint, and self-tap it there. But we're going to utilize the ground. There's like a little bolt, a stud that comes out right here. You won't be able to see it, but you could feel it. It's literally right there. And this will just go on it, and then you'll just have to get a nut, and you could just thread it right on. But there's no paint or anything. It's just straight ground. Get that on. And you'll be able to have some slack in the line, and we'll just put a bolt on it and thread her on in. So we finally put this seat down, and we'll just slid this right under it. I'm just going to put this back on and just secure this in place for the meantime, and we'll have to find a home for that. You could really put it anywhere, but it's nice to just get it out of the way, put it through the back, and then kind of just route it in an area that's not going to be in the way. I totally just closed that on you.
Shut me out.
Set you out, but let's see where we want to mount that thing. Let's put this back in there. We went ahead and just cut some of that styrofoam out. For now, we'll leave it there. And then once everything's fine-tuned and good to go, I'll button that up, get it more firm, maybe some double-sided tape or some kind of Velcro, and just kind of set it right there. All right, so we finally finished the fueling aspect of things for the big turbo, little mini series. We did the MPI kit, the wiring, and the low-pressure fuel pump. And of course, we did some things off camera, the water pump, and some other carbon cleaning and stuff like that. But this was strictly just for the fueling aspect. In the next video, it's really going to be the turbo and the spark plugs and some little miscellaneous things. But pretty much that's going to wrap up today's video. We hope you enjoyed. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, like, and we'll see you in the next one.